Welcome everyone, this is La Vida Carmesí with Maria and Eva. Today we are talking about non-cisgender identities with Georgie Williams.
Hi Georgie, thank you very much for having a coffee with us.
It's a pleasure.
It's our pleasure as well to have you here. And well, I'm just going to introduce what I know of you is basically that you are a PhD researcher at the University College of Dublin. You specialise on transgender, genderqueer, non-binary and intersex experiences. Is that right? Well, I think that's the gist of it. Probably there's a bit more of that, I can imagine.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much correct. So I'm currently on deferral of my PhD while I travel through the US, Japan, Australia and Indonesia, writing the /queer podcast. So /queer is a project that I work on where I look at, as you said, transgender, genderqueer, non-binary and intersex experiences. And I look at that from a transnational perspective to kind of give a global take on the variants of gender identity around the world and what the history of that is. So that's a general overview.
Wow, that's amazing, Georgie. So you are actually doing all the research from the UK, or are you physically traveling to those countries?
I am backpacking all the way through. So I am starting in New York as of next week, and I will be doing Indiana, so I might be dropping into Purdue University, Chicago, down to Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then Kyoto, Nara, Osaka, Tokyo, down to Perth, up to Bali and South Sulawesi, and then potentially Lesotho, just inside of South Africa.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a massive trip. So hopefully you can speak with us once you finish to let us know what you found and what you learned in all those.
I would love to.
Fantastic.
Wow. And we wanted to have you today with us because everyone who has been listening to us should know that, for example, I'm a mother, I'm non-binary, I'm like a normal heterosexual white woman, and Maria is almost the same. So, and,
no kids, that's the only thing.
And the thing is that we realize that from where we are, we are Spanish. Okay, that's something that I have to say, because I realized that here in England there's not tradition, but it's more like normal having like non-binary identities and gay people. It's better looked than in Spain.
Yeah.
It's been like a non-speakable topic in Spain for a lot of time because we have the dictatorship of Franco. Back in time, it was prohibited actually. You couldn't be gay, you couldn't be like, I mean, you couldn't be any other thing than heterosexual, like that. And we've been dragging that for a lot of two generations actually. So
it still is hard.
It's still
hard.
A stigma in there.
I think it's different from Spain to the UK in the sense that we are still behind in the sense of being able to be more open-minded, and I come from a generation that is a lot more close to this kind of information, this kind of possibilities. It's like, no, they're not there. Well, yes, they're there, and we need to get used to it and talk about it and know about it. And this is my problem. I don't have that many people around me. My experiences are very limited, and it's not as if I can just go and check with anyone, oh, what do you feel about this? I mean, it's not a topic that you can talk to anyone anytime. So I feel I'm lacking information, and this is where we're coming from, because I'm pretty sure this is going to help a lot of other people that are in the same situation as us. Basically, I'm hoping that this will help people to see a different point of view, perhaps, or help us to understand better when we are in a position where we don't see the whole picture.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, cultural differences are a huge issue with something like this. So I grew up in England, but my background is that I'm half Scottish and half South African. So my paternal side of the family is entirely from South Africa. And there are so many taboos regarding gender within South African culture as well. There's very interesting and sometimes toxic kind of aspects on masculinity. Queerness is something that has faced a lot of hostility in South African culture. I know from personal experience that I have been open about my own sexuality in my family as a pansexual person attracted to people regardless of gender. But as a genderqueer person, that's not something I've broached with my family because of these rigid ideas of masculinity and femininity. So for clarification, as a genderqueer person, what that means for me is that, and it varies from person to person, the general understanding of the term is that it is an individual who is not exclusively male or female. So it's like non-binary, but not everybody completely identifies as non-binary as well as genderqueer. They're terms with kind of different sentiment behind them. So for me, the reason I use genderqueer is that sometimes I do identify somewhat or want to present somewhat as male or female, but that changes for me. It's not always the same. So sometimes I experience gender dysphoria, which I have had on and off since I was about 14 or 15. I will bind my chest. I will try and androgynize my body to look slightly more masculine, obviously because I was assigned female at birth. I will try and manage those feelings of my body not fitting my identity by kind of, changing my outward, aesthetic so that it kind of aligns more with my sense of self. So that's something that I don't always experience. I think dysphoria is something that's very personal to each individual. So some trans people experience gender dysphoria, but also some don't. And there is a huge debate around the validity of people that do experience gender dysphoria and those that don't. I wrote an article recently about transgender identities and bioessentialism. This idea that in order to be valid as a trans person or anybody who isn't cisgender, you have to experience gender dysphoria. You have to be uncomfortable with your body as a prerequisite, and you also have to want to transition to being male or female completely. There's a presumption that you should want to go through hormonal and medical transitions in order to be considered valid, which is deeply problematic because what it does...
Very extreme.
Yeah, it is extreme, and what it does is it presumes that everybody experiences gender dysphoria about the same aspects of their body, and it also presumes a very white, Western, contemporary perspective on the gendering of bodies. The idea that everybody should feel a particular way about their anatomy that is gendered in a homogenous way across the board, which is, there's issues with that. I mean, you start off looking at cisgender men who have breast tissue. There's a presumption that those individuals should probably feel dysphoric about that, because does that imply that their body is not authentically masculine? There's huge issues, especially regarding intersex individuals. So these are individuals that it falls under an umbrella of they will feel, not necessarily feel, but they will have a variation in their chromosomes. So some of them might have XXY or XYY, triple XY. These are individuals that will sometimes have what's considered ambiguous genitalia. And so there's a presumption that these individuals should be in a constant state of distress about their bodies because they don't align with male or female. So there is an issue regarding trans and gender variant and sex variant individuals regarding how they fit in with the rest of society, because there are people that assume that in order to be valid, they should be uncomfortable with their bodies and they should want to look either exclusively male or exclusively female.
Whilst I was listening to you, I was not actually expecting such a deep conversation. Because no, it's been brilliant because a lot of things are coming to me because as a mother, I've been experiencing a lot of changes in my body lately because I had like 2 children born really close in time. So I was just trying to fit everything in my head, because I know it's not the same at all, but somehow I can empathize, because it's like you see your body as if it were not your body for a certain amount of time, and then it changes again, and right now my body is not at all how it used to be. And then you have the pressure of the society when, for example, you want to go to the swimming pool or whatever, and you saw your belly and it's not perfect or it's not what it was, and these kind of things. And it's everything coming to aesthetics, but it's like the society is pushing you to have a perfect body according on what you are. So if you are a mother, it's like you should be a perfect woman, but being a mother doesn't exclude you to the thing that you have to have a perfect body. So it's kind of like, if you're a woman, you need to have a perfect body with breast and this and that, and if you are a man, you cannot have breast, or your mind. I mean, everything should align on a specific pattern, and as you said, really Western pattern. And it's like, boom. You see,
well, no, I mean, you are correct. You know, it's not the same experience, but I think we can all identify with the social expectations placed upon our bodies. And it's interesting how you talk about, you know, the changing of your body after having children and how that impacts your own sense of self. And there are so many aspects of, you know, especially female experiences that individuals wish to regulate in order to make you appealing to particularly a male gaze. And I know that there are lots of trans and non-cisgender individuals that experience a similar issue. If you think about something like PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, where individuals, usually of XX chromosomes, so assigned female at birth, will have all sorts of issues regarding sometimes facial hair, and you can have irregular periods. It can affect a myriad of aspects of the body, which we do inherently gender. And so when we talk about the validity of trans individuals and whether or not they pass, we also have to acknowledge the fact that our ideas of what's possible as female don't even align with what cisgender women look like half the time anyways, and it applies to men as well. It's this strange ideology about what peak femininity and masculinity should look like that actually cisgender or transgender or gender variant, none of us can attain.
Right, okay. So from my point of view is trying to understand with what I know, how I see it, try to empathize or, I don't know, understand it. But what I will not be able to understand probably or see it in the same way is the, how can I say it, the pressure that comes with it, how each individual will deal with it mentally, in the sense of not everybody deals with the same things in the same way. It doesn't matter what gender to start with or what society, we all deal with different things differently.
Yes.
Spain, in the UK, and it doesn't matter if you're female, male or any other way, we all deal with things differently. So trying to think how that can affect, I mean, the society is prepared for something specific to put us all in a pod, right? So we're all trying to kind of like adapt as much as possible, and within that obviously there's an added pressure of being different, let's say. How does it affect, and how can we help to make it easier?
That's a great question. And I mean,
who knows if there's an answer?
I mean, there are a myriad of things that individuals can do as a form of allyship, and it varies, because not everybody is going to be able to give the same time and labor. Not everyone can be an activist, and it's unreasonable to expect that of everybody, because we all have different responsibilities and we're all busy people. But what the trans and gender variant communities need is a platform. We don't want people to speak on behalf of us. Just here, sitting here now, I have to acknowledge I am a genderqueer person. I don't speak for transgender individuals who are transitioning across a binary. I certainly don't speak for intersex individuals. The multiplicity of gender variant experiences can't be homogenized into one singular narrative. I will never be able to speak on behalf of these other people. I can only speak for my experience. And it's the same across the board. And so it's important for all of us as allies, for people whose experiences aren't our own, to say, okay, I can't tell your story, but I have a social media platform where I can share information about what you're going through. I can discuss these matters with other individuals that don't have access to this information. Giving an individual an opportunity for their voice to be heard in some form or another is so crucial. Because when we talk about marginalized individuals, we talk about people within the margins who aren't visible, they aren't heard, because they are pushed off to the side of mainstream culture. So that's what makes it so important that these individuals have an opportunity to speak about their own experiences, express what they need and want with regards to social change, and have that be heard, which is why I think social media is such a powerful tool, because you don't have to ever speak for that person. You can share articles, you can share podcasts, you can put that information out there without it being your voice. But there are so many issues at the moment affecting trans and gender variant and sex variant individuals regarding legislation. I think there's a huge problem with the fact that so much documentation, especially in the UK, has these very specific categories for gender and sex, and the terms are conflated, which is a problem. There is a presumption on many of these documents that if you write that your gender is female, that your sex is also female, and therefore people will make assumptions about, for example, what medical treatment you may need based on that. Now, obviously, it's incredibly important that trans individuals can put whatever their gender is on a document without that being queried. However, there is a problem with the fact that the language that's used around these matters is not understood.
That's true.
And that assumption that sex and gender are the same is a huge, huge issue. We ignore the fact that gender is something psychological and sex is something biological, and actually so little of what we consider our gender identity is determined by biology. There are some fantastic books out there at the moment that I would always recommend people have a read of regarding these things if they want a better understanding. One of my favorite books is by Dr. Cordelia Fine. It's a book called Testosterone Rex, and that's R-E-X, like the dinosaur. And it's the whole idea that the way we understand testosterone and hormones and their effects on human behavior, these ideas are very outdated. So, for example, one experiment that Dr. Fine references in this book looks at how testosterone impacts the behavior of cisgender women. And what was found is that actually in individuals that were exhibiting particular behaviors that would be considered masculine, these individuals would have a spike in their testosterone as a response to the situation they were enacting, where they were behaving in a way that they considered more masculine. So what the research is now suggesting is that it is not these innate hormonal levels within the body that determine our gender identity. It is our perception of gendered behavior within society that determines the hormone levels in our bodies. Now, this ties into a phenomenon that's been noticed amongst trans and gender variant communities, that individuals that come out as a particular gender identity often find that they start going through some kind of transition before they start any hormone replacement therapy. So you will notice that trans men may start growing facial hair. Trans women may have slightly softer facial features, may even start growing a small amount of breast tissue, because something to do with the experience of being able to be open about their gender identity and have it affirmed socially impacts their hormonal levels. It's the same as mental health, in the way that we now understand that our environments will impact the neurochemistry that we have. It's the same with hormones within the body. So this idea, like I said, of bioessentialism, that there is this strict biology that determines the maleness or femaleness of a body that's tied to hormones and androgens and chromosomes, it is incredibly atavistic, it's outdated, and it's not really as relevant within contemporary understandings of gender and sex as we once believed it was. So when we talk about kind of allyship, it's about acknowledging the fact that there are a myriad of different social issues that impact the trans and gender variant community. First of all, the misunderstanding of the science around it, and there is still a lack of research regarding these issues as well. We must admit that. This is something that's only really been picked up by social scientists in the last few years, and there has been a huge issue with trans, gender variant and intersex individuals being pathologized and medicalized by medical researchers, kind of being treated as a sum of their parts instead of people. So that needs to be acknowledged, and the fact that by and large these people have not had an opportunity to speak about their own experiences, because it has always been assumed that the greater authority is a cisgender heterosexual person, usually a white person, that can speak on behalf of them. So the best thing that we can do, I believe, as allies, is know when to promote and know when to step aside.
No, I really understand that, because it's what actually women are asking to men to do. It's like, I don't want you to carry the amplifier or to be my voice, I want you to support my voice. So it's exactly the same. And also because we have that discussion right now in the feminism in Spain, because a lot of racial communities are asking for more support, but they don't want a white woman to speak on behalf of them. They want their own voice to be spoken. They want their own spaces. And it's the same, and I cannot speak for you, because I don't really know what you are feeling. I don't really know what your problems are. So best thing I can do is to offer you this space to speak, and trying to make your voice to be heard. And something that is kind of scaring me is social media itself, because the algorithm that is ruling the internet makes everyone to see what they want to see. So it's a bit scary, because if someone is just in the white, privileged, male internet world, is never going to see this, for example. Or this is very complicated for if you are out of some kind of searches on the searching engine, that person is never going to find information.
I get
so
it,
it's
but
not that.
I use social media. I have curiosity. I want to know. I'm searching for all the information.
But you have the curiosity.
Exactly. So I think what we need to tell people is to have more curiosity, not to think that they are the only ones with the whole truth of. I mean, they have the whole truth of their own world, but there are other worlds out there, and people need to have curiosity and understand other people's point of view, just with an open mind. I think that's what we need to bring across. That yes, of course, my world is as good as yours, but in order to understand your world, I need to go into it from a perspective of understanding, curiosity, respect. And trying to get as much knowledge as possible from your perspective, not mine, because mine is just, I mean, yes, I can try to, as a woman, I want to be a feminist, I want to fight for my own rights, so I can definitely relate with your fight in that sense, but I will never be able to understand what you're really going through. But I think if people really want to, they can actually see other point of view. The problem is, social media is not helping at all, but I think it's because people are really, really comfortable at home just letting the scroll down without searching for things. And this is why we are doing this, because we want to have a little more open mind. Well, this is why I'm doing it. I want to know more. I want to. I'm fed up of being fed the information that I without having a say. Well, I don't even want to have a say. I just want to know more and understand better. That's basically it. And then, yes, I will have my point of view, which it might be good or bad, or, you know, it will be probably biased, because it will always be. But still, at least I'll see other point of view, and then I'll have a better understanding. And this is where I'm coming from. So I'm so pleased that you're here for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree that I think effective allyship requires being uncomfortable. It requires showing some kind of interest for experiences that will never pertain to you. You know, it's about using your empathy to try and understand the experiences that will never come to you as an individual. And there is a huge issue with that regarding kind of misunderstandings about gender variance and especially about race. I think we like to believe that there are these kind of set categories within which normal exists. And actually that is so incredibly, it's culture bound, it is bound by conceptions of race. And a perfect example is everything that Caster Semenya, the athlete, has gone through. Now, Caster is an individual who has a difference of sex development, which would fall under the intersex umbrella, but she is a woman. She absolutely is a woman. There is no question about that. And the vitriol that she has faced as an individual who is competing as an athlete alongside other women is horrendous. Yes, she has a difference of sex development, but it doesn't give her an advantage. In fact, her hormone levels are not that far outside of what we would consider the norm for any woman. If you look at somebody like Michael Phelps, who is a white, cisgender, heterosexual man, he has a biological abnormality, which means that he produces less lactic acid than other athletes. Now, this does give him an advantage.
Indeed.
However, nobody is putting him on medication to control his lactic acid levels. The fact that Caster Semenya is being forced to reduce her testosterone levels to compete is not only an issue of gender and sex, it's an issue of race.
Yes.
Because continually there have been these bizarre conceptions about what femininity should look like that are white and European. Now, this is a matter of transmisogynoir. It's an experience of misogyny which is only experienced by trans women. This idea that because they don't have particular features, because Caster Semenya is a woman of high muscle mass who has what are socially considered to be somewhat more masculine facial features, she is not valid as a woman. And I call it transmisogynoir because appallingly, people are presuming that she is trans, and she's not. She has always identified as a woman. She has always been a woman, and the media response to what she's gone through has been incredibly unprofessional because there have been outlets suggesting that she is trans. And so what she's experienced is a world away from what you or I will ever go through. But it does require sensitivity and empathy and anger as well, righteous anger over the fact that she is being treated like she will never be enough of a woman based on bizarre, you know, Western and especially white European standards of femininity. And obviously this isn't something that I can talk hugely on because it's not my area of expertise. Obviously I'm white as a jar of mayonnaise. But I do see myself as having a responsibility as a researcher to go out there and look at what narratives I would not have come across otherwise and acknowledge when they make me uncomfortable, because that's when I'm finally questioning myself and my own positionality and my own privilege. If I'm hearing about a story and thinking, oh God, I feel strange about the fact that this individual is being marginalized by a system that benefits me, that's the reflexivity that we all need in order to acknowledge how we benefit and how we can start to influence that system in order to help others instead of it continuing to benefit ourselves.
I think that everything that we are talking about, it's basically coming to one point, and everything is really easy in my mind, that we should basically be more compassionate about the whole world and everyone. It's like in this society we are living today, we are just full of rage, and we are attacking here, there, to this person, to that other person. It has nothing to do with this, but Greta is being attacked these days on media by everyone, just because this and that. And it's like, if you do something, it's wrong. If you don't do anything, it's wrong also. And I think that somehow we should stop, because I'm thinking about how I should raise my children, and it's I think that compassion is the way, basically, because it's like tiring to trying to explain, oh, you should understand and be kind to this person because this and because that and because that. I mean, we should stop maybe thinking about the differences we have, and trying to just be compassionate and good and kind towards like everyone, in despite of how we are. This is really idealistic,
no? I know, and the bottom line probably is we should treat each other like human beings. Full stop.
Basically. So, but this actually destroys everything we have been talking about. Another thing is that I think that is the fear of people when they see something different. And that's the thing. Here you see that walking on the streets, people with such a freedom compared with when you go to Spain. Again, you see like such a... you see men that they are obviously men. They behave like men. They are men and they are dressing like a woman. You don't see that in Spain. No one looks like them. I heard that, for example, in jobs, if you want to change your gender, people should actually respect you. If you don't respect someone, you are actually automatically reported to human resources. That's something that for us in Spain, that's unbelievable. It's like, here in England, there's a massive respect for like almost everyone. It's like the law itself is protecting differences. You cannot make any racist commentary in a company or a gender attack or something like that, and that's brilliant. I mean, it's something that in a lot of countries is missing, like Spain. I mean, laws should protect also the minorities or people who might be like in the risk of being attacked and bullied.
And yet, Georgie, you're saying that it's still not developed properly as they should be, right? So,
what do you think that the government should maybe carry on doing here in England, or what do you think that it's missing?
What are the next steps?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a big question. I would say, I wish I had all of the answers. I would say I can understand your perspective with regards to there being a huge cultural difference regarding how these things are handled in Spain compared to here. Obviously, we still have some huge issues. I would say that the mainstream media in the UK is not perfect with these things. Even if you look at what's happening at the moment with Naga Munchetty, with her response.
Yes. I've seen that.
With her response to the matter of racism being discussed, which she, of course, condemned, which is now being considered to not be impartial enough.
I can't believe it.
It's horrendous. And there is an issue with the fact that there is still a huge problem with trans hate crimes around the country. I also volunteer with Mermaids, who are a fantastic charity who support trans and gender variant children and adolescents. So they have a fantastic service with a hotline and a web chat, which I volunteer as part of. And the hatred that they have received as part of the work they do. The Daily Mail, for example, wrote a slanderous piece about them because we provided a chest binder to a young trans boy. And they were suggesting that what Mermaids were doing were trying to turn children trans. Now,
there we go.
What a lot of people don't understand is that a trans boy or an individual who is assigned female at birth that starts developing breast tissue, that individual is not going to avoid binding because they don't have a chest binder. They will do whatever they can to bind, and that might be unsafe. That can damage their tissue, it can affect their ability to breathe properly. I know that when I was 14, I started chest binding with pairs of old tights. It's not that these individuals won't do it if they don't have safe equipment to do so. What mermaids were doing were providing safe binders so that that young child could engage in that behavior without harming themselves.
That's
Now, we are not, and we're not obliged to tell parents about this because in the UK, outing any trans individual of any age without their consent to anybody is considered a hate crime, which is good. But obviously, that's not something that the Daily Mail is going to cover. And in response to what's been a few articles now written by, I believe, the Daily Mail and I think potentially the Telegraph, but I'm not entirely certain on that, we have received death threats, rape threats. We have people calling up the hotline to abuse the volunteers. We have these aggressive emails. I think there is an issue regarding how these matters are handled in the media. And I think that is something that requires some kind of intervention because it has a profound influence on the general populace, obviously, because individuals still believe that whatever is published in a newspaper is a truth. And
there we go.
Yeah, and I think that is a huge issue because that shows a trend within mainstream media to discredit and dehumanize trans and gender variant individuals. So I think that is a huge component of the kind of change that needs to occur in the UK. Obviously, there are still a huge amount of legislative issues regarding trans and gender variant rights. The fact that these matters are not being taught in schools, I think, is a huge problem. Obviously, LGBT inclusive sex education is now being implemented, in parts around the country. However, I don't believe that children should have to wait until a particular age to learn about gender variance because it makes it a taboo subject, but also B, a sexualized subject. And I think that's a problem. The sexualization of trans and gender variant individuals is a huge issue because by sexualizing it, not only do you assume that these individuals are sexual people, and trans and gender variant individuals can be asexual, obviously, but also it presumes perversion. It presumes that there is something inherently wrong and disgusting about individuals, which is why to suggest that a child could be trans is seen as so shocking because obviously these individuals won't know themselves well enough at a young age, but also B, it is seen as something disgusting, as something that you would see in a nightclub instead of a regular person expressing their gender identity as the rest of us do. There is nothing inherently perverse about being male or female, so why is that the case for a trans individual who is also authentically male or female if they align themselves within a binary? So I think we do need to destigmatize trans and gender variant identities when we are teaching people about them, because if we continue to treat it as a sexual preference or a fetish, all that does is reduce these individuals to sexual objects, and it reduces them to a sum of their parts once again. That question of, but what's in your pants? I mean, can you imagine asking that to a cisgender person? It's horrific. So the fact that it is totally normalized to base how we treat an individual based on their genitalia, that is something that needs to be addressed, I think.
But that should start at home. I mean, I strongly agree with education in the school, because if you have just the opposite at home, those children never will have another vision. And actually, not even coming to trans, if we are speaking only about gay, being lesbian or gay, it's in Spain they started this kind of education in specific schools. And there's been a massive negative response to that because a lot of parents, they started to think that their children, they are going to become gay. So we only want to speak about that in Spain. We don't go even into the debate of the trans gender issues. We are talking just about gay people, just that, something so simple. And they also think that their children are going to become gay. It's like, really? And that's the debate in Spain. See how far behind we are at the moment in Spain. And it's complicated, because if I speak with my children when the time comes, obviously, I will try to raise them in the most equality way, and I will try for them to understand that everyone should be treated in the same way. But just schools in England, starting with, they split children with skirts and trousers. So this is something that they want to do, this kind of training in the schools, this kind of information, but they are already, starting with, since they are really, really little, they give like different uniforms to children. So you are woman, you are men, starting with. So.
Yeah.
The message is...
It's interesting what you say regarding the backlash that's occurring in Spain regarding teaching children about, gay experiences and gay identity. Because we have had a similar backlash in Birmingham, I believe, with the implementation of LGBT sex education there, largely from the Muslim community within Birmingham, because there is this idea that there is an incompatibility between being a practicing Muslim and being queer. Now, obviously, this is a problem across many organized religions. This is not an Islam issue. This is an organized religion issue.
Catholic in Spain, that's the thing. Catholic education in Spain.
Yeah, it's rife in Christianity as much as I believe it can be in Islam. But there is, been quite a significant backlash because of this idea that it is going to negatively influence the children. And there is a saying, especially amongst the trans community, of we don't want to make your cis children trans. We want your trans children to live.
That's it.
It's not about converting anyone. This is not a cult, and that's a word that's used a lot with regards to gender identity. This is described as a cult, and that's not the case. Actually, it is about giving people options and choice regarding how they can authentically express themselves. And I think it's so interesting what you've said about the bizarre gendering of school uniforms, that we have, trousers for boys and skirts for girls, because that also demonstrates a cultural myopia. The fact that around the world there are many cultures in which men wear what we would consider to be a skirt or a dress. And so what we are doing when we force these children to segregate themselves based on the gendering of their clothes is we ignore and we disavow their own cultural background and how that may vary from what's considered the white British norm. So gender is an issue with so many different facets, from race, nationality, socioeconomic status as well. Our understandings of gender are hugely variant based on class. It's not something which can be reduced down into one isolated factor. There are so many extraneous variables that play into it. And the reason why this is so often ignored is because we love categories. We love being able to say that identities can fall neatly into boxes so that we can understand them better.
We want to label everything.
Yes, absolutely. And it's because we like to say, if I'm not this, then I must be this. We have parallels between things. We love binaries. So a great example is there is a term used to describe masculinity that's reinforced by not being feminine. And it's called parasitic symbiosis. Whoa. It's this idea that when men look at women, they go, oh, that's what I'm not. So everything that a woman is what I'm not, and vice versa. So this idea of engaging with anything feminine invalidates your maleness, and vice versa. And so you can see that issue with the response to trans individuals and gender variant individuals. And obviously feminist women who don't like to necessarily align with traditional gender stereotypes, because these individuals may be behaving in ways that don't align with their assigned gender at birth. What that means is that individuals that look at them can no longer say, oh, well, they represent everything I'm not. And once you have to question what they represent, It means you have to question yourself and your own sense of identity. So when we disavow these categories of identity, it's no longer clear what an individual is and isn't. And that introspection can make an individual feel insecure. Gender is such a personal subject that it means that playing with gender as an individual, as a society, will make others feel confused about their own sense of self, because they can no longer compare themselves with everything that they're not in that rigid binaristic sense.
Yeah, but I think that comes because of the way the education is stipulated from the basics. So we always, I mean, from where Eva said that obviously at school you wear trousers and you wear skirt because you're a girl, and you wear trousers because you're a boy. My point of view is that limits already from the beginning the gender, the female gender is already limited, because you have a skirt and you have to be careful not to show your underwear. I mean, that's already a limitation on a side of the of the whole world. So you divide in two, and already one is already diminished to start with, and from that base, then anything else that comes along, it has to be put in a box and it has to be diminished in some way, so the male part doesn't get affected, let's say. This is the way I'm seeing it so far. From all the information I can see is that it's affecting, let's say, the male part, because it's, in general, I think it's male dominated. So I think there's a lot of ground to go through before we can actually reach a moment where everything can be labeled. So
yes, I agree.
My question is, so if at school there's a backlash, not just because, I mean, so if you go to a school where there's no issue with religion, for instance, let's say, would that be a problem to educate them? It's like talking about history. I mean, past is something that happened before. You cannot change it. This is already happened. Is there, and it's part of our culture. You cannot just ignore it. You need to learn about it. This is my point of view. So if we focus on that instead of saying, oh, you are trying to impose something on me, that shouldn't really be the case, right? This is the way I'm seeing it. Do you see my point?
In an ideal world, absolutely. But there is a problem with the fact that people don't acknowledge the history of trans and gender variant individuals. We're still being treated like we've just popped out of the woodwork in the last 10 or so years.
I see.
Yeah, and so the problem is that, yes, absolutely, there is a rich human history that needs to be acknowledged regarding gender identity. And if you go into a school with this fact and information, yes, you can teach children about it. But the problem is that access to these spaces in the first place is so often denied because of this misunderstanding, because this is being treated as a trend, as a fad. And actually the problem is that history, for the most part, has been written by cisgender people.
And
so
men.
And men, you are absolutely correct. So, for example, if you look at Native American culture, there were originally individuals within Navajo communities who were assigned male at birth, or what we would consider assigned male at birth, who would take on a feminine role within their society because they showed a proclivity for occupational skills that were associated with womanhood. And these individuals could take a husband, they could adopt orphan children within the community, and they were given traditional feminine burial rites at the end of their life.
Oh.
But when colonialists and anthropologists, and I use this term loosely because the science behind that was questionable, engaged with these communities, it made them uncomfortable. And the history of their experiences, of the rich gender variance of Navajo communities was lost.
Erased.
Because it was not recorded properly. It was whitewashed. And it's only now, in the age of globalization, that we are finding ways to reclaim these histories, to record them properly, and allowing, for these individuals of native populations to re-embrace these traditions. And so there is a huge problem with the fact that, yes, for centuries. Trans and gender variant people have been everywhere, but we have been kept out of the history books because it is not the story that people want to be telling.
It's like the heteropatriarchy has been erasing trans people, women, everyone who has not been like a white man, basically.
Yeah.
Because same happened with a lot of women in culture. I'm like reading these last days about a lot of like women in art, and it's the same. I mean, you will be surprised how many have been in there, and they've been erased from the museums, from every art book, and everywhere. So it's amazing how they've managed to erase that many interesting people, culture, and everything that was not in their mindset. It's just
absolutely. And there is a problem with the fact that, as part of globalization, white Western norms have spread around the globe, and they've impacted other cultures that have had these gender variant traditions and norms, which means that it is still being lost to us. There are communities around the world like the Bujanese in Indonesia. The Bugis people have a 5-gender system, and I might butcher this, but I believe their 5 genders are Makunrai, Oroane, Kalabai, Kalalai, and Bisu. Now, Makunrai and Oroane are the closest thing that it's like cisgender male and female, but obviously the parameters for how they determine male and female are different to us. And then Kalabai and Kalalai are like close to trans male and trans female. But then Bisu is androgynous. It's considered transcendent of gender, genderless. And the Bujanese people have always believed that their society thrives on having this 5-gender system. There can't be one without the other. And Bisu are considered the perfect medical practitioners and healers because they're above gender. So they can't have this bias between who they treat. But the problem is that with increasing globalization and the variation in kind of the borders that we used to have between countries and cultures, there is an issue of transphobia and queerphobia emerging within Indonesia because of this, this impact of globalization, which means that fewer and fewer people are taking up the role of being Bisu within their community because of fear of stigma, because if they leave their own geographical space, they will face, transphobia, queerphobia, aggression, and vitriol. So these cultures are being lost to the fact that we have made transphobia and queerphobia a kind of colonial export.
That's unbelievable.
Question then, is this the reason why you're traveling for your podcast then?
It is, actually. I'm hoping to interview a group of Bujanese individuals when I reach South Sulawesi. But I have a myriad of different communities I'm hoping to engage with around the world. So, for example, in Lesotho, there used to be individuals who were in what are called Motsoale relationships. So that's Motsoale, which the closest thing you have to it is like a lesbian or sapphic relationship. Obviously, you don't want to use the same terms because they determine relationships within different parameters to us. But it was normalized within the communities of the Soto people to have these strong relationships between women, and they weren't considered sexual because sex amongst the people of Lesotho was only considered heterosexual penetrative sex. So anything else erotic outside of that wasn't necessarily considered sexual. So you could have these very sensual relationships between women that weren't considered a replacement to male-female relationships, but they were completely accepted. And once again, over the last few decades, you have seen fewer and fewer Motsoale relationships within the communities of the Soto people because of this social stigma that is now leaking into their communities. So part of the /queer project that I'm working on is looking at how queerness is not only an afterthought that's kind of overlooked amongst many cultures, but also it's an addendum to everything. You will find queerness everywhere. And I use the term very delicately as well, because obviously not everybody likes the term queer. I don't like to use the term queer to describe other communities necessarily, because it's a word with a strong history of being a slur that was reclaimed. There is trauma behind that word that not everybody will want to be applied to their own experiences or cultures. But I do use it as a general catch-all term for that which exists outside of the white Western forms of gender, sexuality, and sex. So that's what I'm looking at in the project, is providing a platform for individuals who, if they want to share their story, they can, and they can demonstrate the multiplicity of the human experience from a gender and sexuality perspective.
That's amazing.
Brilliant.
So, just a question for everyone who might be interested in following your podcast. How often are you planning to do that? Or are you going to record everything and start broadcasting that after your trip or during your trip?
I will be broadcasting during my trip. So I'm traveling with my Chromebook and my giant microphone. So I am doing, let's think, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably about 8 episodes, maybe 8 or 9 over about 5 months, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So those will be produced as I travel. At this point in time, my website is up and I write articles on there already. So that's /queer.com. That's SLASH queer.com. I also have my Twitter as well, where you can follow that for updates. That's also /queer, and Instagram as well, same handle. So I will be keeping it regularly updated. And if there are individuals that want to be interviewed, that feel they have a story to tell, I really want people to be getting in touch. I want this to be a collaborative community project. I don't want to be doing this as some kind of expert, because I don't believe I am an expert, because I don't think you can be an expert in the human experience. So it'd be great to have more people getting involved. I always want feedback and responses and criticism as well, because I'm here to learn from this experience as much as anybody else is.
It's amazing what you are doing, and I hope that you have a lot of people willing to speak with you, and a lot of people listening also. We'll try to share this as much as we can, and we'll try to make your voice more global.
I think we are going to learn a bit more of what's out there, which I had no idea. I mean, things that you mentioned, I have no clue about. And the history that you're talking about that has been lost, and that hopefully you'll recover a little bit of that for us, because I have no idea where to start. So all of that, I'm looking forward to actually listen to your podcast, because I think it's going to give us a bit of that kind of point of view that I would have never been able to obtain any other way. So I'm looking forward to that. When is it the first one that you were planning to put out there? Do you know?
I'm thinking probably end of October, beginning of November. So in probably just over a month's time. So I will be doing my first episode on the emergence and loss of trans spaces in New York City. And I'll hopefully be interviewing Carrie Davis, who is a fantastic trans activist in New York. I recommend anybody that's interested in understandings of trans culture within the contemporary postmodern Anglophone West to look into her work. She's fantastic. And if anybody, wants me to look into anything in particular while I'm over in the States, please drop me a message, because I'll go wherever there's a story.
That's amazing.
Brilliant.
We'll keep an eye on everything you are doing, definitely. And I think that thank you everyone who has been listening. You've been really patient, because this has been really long coffee, the one we're having here, but it's been extremely interesting. So I can bet that everyone has been listening to the end. And I was wondering if you have something just to say, just to finish this podcast.
Anything else to add?
Like a general conclusion, something that you really want to remark, something...
I think the message that I really want to drive home is the importance of an open dialogue. That none of us are going to be experts in this ever, regardless of our background, and also none of us need to be. There's this expectation that in order to be good allies, we have to fully understand a situation, that we have to spend hours and hours and hours reading up on a subject, and we don't have to. being empathetic, being open-minded, patient, conscientious, and willing to have that dialogue is what really matters with allyship. We all have something to learn from each other, and that you have that with race, with gender, with sexuality, with socioeconomic status, with every facet of the human experience. We all have something to learn from each other, and gender is just the same.
I love that point, because it doesn't put inside a box who you need to be kind with. It actually says that you need to be kind with everyone in regards of what they are. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. You just need to listen. I think listening is underrated, and we all have something to learn from one another, you know?
Everybody, absolutely everybody. Totally agree with that. Georgie, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate all the information you passed on to us, and I think it's going to be really, really useful to start understanding. I'm not saying, as you said, I'm going to become knowledgeable about it, but definitely it has opened up my world a little bit more, which is what I was I wanted to get out of this. I hope that everybody that's been listening has had that impression as well, because I come from another, I don't know, with a different perspective, and it has helped me a lot. Eva,
we definitely come. Yes, definitely. We come from a completely different world here, and in my case, I want to raise my children in a completely different way than the one I've been raised, and in a completely different society. Right now, I have the chance, because living in the UK has been really broadening my mind, and it's giving me a different perspective of everything. And it's been delightful talking to you, Georgie. A lot of things just click in my mind, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything you are doing.
Well, thank you for sharing your platform with me. I really appreciate it. You know, it really matters to have an opportunity to discuss these things, and I really appreciate the work that both of you are doing, so thank you.
We love speaking with you, and you are welcome and invited to next time you want to come and speak with us. We'll have a coffee prepared for you.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, I will definitely be back.
Brilliant.
So all the best for your trip, and good luck with everything, Georgie.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, guys.
Goodbye, and thank you everyone who has been listening to us. And as always, this coffee podcast has been done in English, but we'll do a rough translation, a coffee chat in between Maria and me, just for everyone who's listening us in Spanish, for them not to be completely lost, and they can have like a small chat is in Spanish translation for them to understand this a bit better, because we want to reach much more people in that way.
Indeed.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgie.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.